Hey everyone, so you may or may not know that I'm a couple of weeks away from finishing my first year as a junior doctor in the UK, the FY1. There are many people who are about to start their FY1 years, and prior to that, the shadowing period. So this is a quick video on how to make the most of that shadowing period before you start your role as an FY1. Okay, so the shadowing period for me was basically a week before I started my full-time employment, timetabled based on the ward and department that I'd be starting my first full rotation. It was a really useful opportunity, and I can see how it would be especially useful for those who are either international students or if you're going to a deanery that's quite far away from where your medical school was, so you've never come across that hospital or the systems that they may or may not use. So first and foremost, whilst this is a shadowing period, sort of treat it in your head as if you're actually working. Ask if you can help out or do the jobs that the doctors that you're shadowing have under supervision, and as long as it's appropriate, because actually doing the jobs and applying the systems that they have in the hospital, especially if you've not come across them before, rather than watching it, is going to help you remember and recall that stuff later on when you're actually working. It will be a lot more helpful to you. So this brings me on to an important point, which is be proactive in searching for guidance on F1. So when I started my orthopedic rotation, which was my first rotation, the year above, the outgoing cohort provided a booklet on Intro to Orthopedics, and that was incredibly useful. It was a lifeline for many of us when we first started. It contained information about escalation of common problems and complications you're likely to come across in the orthopedic wards. It had relevant knowledge that they believe was important to know, and based on their experience, and that actually came out to be really important and really useful for us. And also just general information about shift patterns and what's expected of you, because when you're starting in orthopedics, for instance, there are several different shift patterns. You have the on-calls in trauma and elective, then you have the nights and the weekends, and they're all very slightly different expectations, they work differently. So this booklet had all the information on this, so we could go into the shifts prepared. We know what to expect, we know what to do, we know what the common complications are, we know what to sort of do about that in this hospital based on the hospital's guidance. So try and find out if the department that you're going into in this shadowing week has had any guidebooks created by former F1s or the outgoing cohort. So my final point is kind of linked to the previous one, which is basically to try all the different shifts that you're rotated to work. So during your shadowing week, you're not necessarily going to have in your timetable all the different shifts that you're going to be working when you're working full time. So for instance, during my trauma and orthopedic rotation, I had 14 night shifts, but during my shadowing week, I had no night shifts scheduled. So I made the effort to be proactive and I attended a night shift, and that turned out to be really useful. They're simple tasks like post-op reviews, clerking medications. So it's very simple tasks, but if you've never come across them during the sort of 9 to 5 shadowing period, so you haven't done any shifts outside of that, then you're not going to really know what to do. So it really helps going to all the different types of shifts, knowing what you're expected to do before you start work.